We have many happy family traditions, and our every other year retreat, our reunion, is a part of them. And it just happened that most of us come on Saturday because we go to a resort, and we're here for Sunday is our first full day together, and that means we go to church. Except we decided a few years ago that we're not really dressed for that. We just have our own church worship service, and that worked out really, really well, and it became a part of our family tradition. I was so pleased that I think it was 2 years ago, Elizabeth, you brought the message, I think. Was it 2 or maybe 4? I don't know what it was. Anyway, Elizabeth brought the message, the sermon, and I was pleased to have that happen. And I thought it was about time that her sisters take their turn, and suggested you, Kathy or Elizabeth, take their turn and bring the message here.
Or Debbie.
Or, what did I say?
Elizabeth.
Well, she's had her turn. I said, well, Kathy or
She can have another one.
Debbie. And both of them said, oh, Poppy, Daddy, we don't get to hear you often enough. We want to hear you. I suspect strongly that they decided they didn't want to do it. And so
Not true.
I just think
Not
that they don't
true.
want to do it and stick Daddy with it. And so I agreed to do it this year again, though I am hoping that in future occasions you all will take your turn as well. So I'm doing it again this year, but don't count on me any other time. This has been the most difficult reunion I think we've. For us, now others have had difficulties, but we had a nightmare getting here. Every flight we took was 3 or 4 hours delayed, except the connecting flight to come from Chicago to Springfield, and it was on time, and we missed it. And so, think about it. You can't win. And we missed it, and we had to spend a miserable night in Chicago. And we didn't want to do that. You all having fun and games here, and we're stuck in a hotel room in Chicago. And it was not a happy day. Not. And so we came in on Sunday morning, which is something we've never done before. You all were having a good time here, and we came in on Sunday morning, and we made it. And we're glad we're being here, that we made it here. These have been hard days for us, the last day or two. This family has been cursed with hard days and good days this year. I was thinking, would you agree with me, Valerie, that maybe the day that Cecilia was born was maybe the hardest day, the most that you've ever had in your life?
Day before.
The day before was about the worst day
She was
you've
born
had.
7 minutes into the next day.
Oh yeah, wait a minute.
Yeah.
She's 6 minutes old or whatever it was.
That's right.
Okay, that
First
doesn't
day
count.
was a hard day.
That doesn't count. The 24 hours leading up to her birth
Yes.
was probably the worst day of your life. And yet, in some way, would you say it was the best day? Huh? The hardest, the toughest day, and the best day. Would you say that? And so someday when they sing happy birthday, that's true, but you weren't very happy that 24-hour period, were you? Happiness was not a word to describe what was going on. Hard days can be happy days or good days to which you can say happy. And just as you say Good Friday, it was not a good day for Jesus, but it was a good day for us. And in fact, as I thought about this, the Walgas family probably has had higher highs and lower lows than maybe any other unit of our family this last year. I'm not sure, but I think maybe you have had higher high. Let me say, one of the best days of this year maybe was the day that Sarah came to join your family. And it just got better and better for a year. Would you agree with me?
I really enjoyed it. Well, that and having Cecilia
No,
was also.
I've already covered Cecilia.
Okay.
Except for Cecilia's coming, Sarah's coming.
Yes.
It's about the best day you had. That's true.
Yes.
And maybe the day she left was it was not an easy day.
No.
It was not, that was not a good day.
Yeah.
A highest highs, and it may be the worst day except for the day that Cecilia was born. That was the worst, when you had to say goodbye to Sarah. And goodness, flooding the basement with the toilet overrunning. Now that wasn't quite as bad as living, camping out in your home like Kathy and DJ did for 6 months. Or was it longer than
10 months.
10 months.
Yeah.
But
That was harder.
But it was really bad. And you just had it. You had really, really difficult days. And we've all had. If you haven't had them this year, you're going to have them next year, or the next year. We will have difficult days. Somebody said, you know, it's enough to make a guy lose his religion. And his friend said, no, it's the kind of time to make a guy use his religion. As the saying goes, you can use it or lose it. That's the way it is. You use it or lose it. But how do you use your religion to cope with really rough times? How do you do it? It depends on the kind of religion you have. Now, there are really 3 basic kinds of religions in the world. And I'm not talking about Catholic, Protestants, and Jews, but rather 3 different ways in which religion works in your life during tough times. And all 3 religions are described in Holy Scripture. And they are 3 levels of religious development. And so for our devotion tonight, I want you to begin with the lowest and most primitive religion of all. And it is a religion I call if-then. If-then religion. I think an example can be found in the Old Testament where Jacob swindled his brother Esau out of his birthright and set out for Haran to find a wife. You might remember the story that on the way to Haran, Jacob stopped to spend a few nights, one night really, on the way, and saw a vision of a ladder reaching up into heaven, and angels ascending and descending that ladder. And he called that place Bethel, meaning the house of God, and he made a promise to God. And I want to read you the words of Jacob's promise. Listen to this. Jacob said, "If God will be with me, and will keep me on this journey that I make, and will give me food to eat and garments to wear, and I return to my father's house in safety, then the Lord will be my God, and of all thou givest me, I will surely give 1/10 to thee." You see what Jacob's doing? He's driving a bargain with God, isn't he? He's saying, if you do this, I will do that. Now, Jacob is not the first, nor is he the last to use if-then religion. Many frightened soldiers and anguished parents and desperate teenagers swear that if God will just get them through the immediate crisis, that they'll serve him more faithfully. They call him Lord, but they treat him like a celestial servant whom they send on errands and whose performance then they reward with religious ritual and contributions. If then religion is the world's most popular faith, you know, it fits our modern consumer mentality, so that people choose their God like they choose their doctor or their deodorant. It's just what works for them. And they remain loyal to their God as long as he, she, or it does what they want. And now I think this explains a couple of puzzles. It explains why foxhole religion doesn't last very long. I don't know, anybody you here know what a foxhole religion is? I don't think you've ever, maybe even haven't even heard about that, but the older generations do. In fact, you probably don't even know what a foxhole is. That was used in World War I and sometimes in World War II. They dug foxholes on the front, on the war front, and while they were in the foxhole, and shells began to burst over their heads, they got religion real quick. And they often lost it just as quickly. People pray and promise great things when they are scared or hurt or sick, but as soon as the crisis is over, they go on to other things. If then religion also explains why there's so many different varieties of religion in this world. They multiply like cigarette brands to give alternatives to religious shoppers. You might have noticed that the religious ads in the newspaper section make the same self-serving appeal as ads for cars and underwear. In effect, the ads say, ask not what you can do for God, ask what God can do for you. Even Christian doctrines of heaven and hell can be bent to if-then religion, with motivation differing little from heathen idolaters. A Christian can tolerate the inconvenience here in order to avoid the misery of hell and enjoy the benefits of heaven hereafter. It just kind of makes good sense, doesn't it? To obtain even a worldly-minded businessman can see the practical wisdom of investing an hour a week in church to obtain a profitable return on an eternity in heaven. A tithe is a very modest down payment on pearly gates and golden streets. You see what I'm saying? If then religion is the lowest and most primitive level of faith, and the next step up is what I call even though religion. There's a beautiful example, I think, of even though religion in the book of Habakkuk, a small book that is not read as often or appreciated. It kind of gets lost maybe in the Old Testament prophets. But in the prophet Habakkuk begins his prophecy in chapter 1 with a big complaint that Israel's God is neglecting his job, that he's not taking good care of his people. It was a time in Israel's history when the believing Jews were enslaved by the heathen Babylonians. In other words, at that time, the bad guys were winning and the good guys were losing, and they thought, that's not the way things ought to work. How do you think? Huh? You understand how that feels? When the bad guys are winning and the good guys are losing, this ought not to be. And so Habakkuk dares to tell God off in the first chapter, and believe me, he does. He tells God off. He complains bitterly. And I'm not going to read that chapter